You're watching the Mondays with Midja podcast. Midja is founder and CEO of Legal Leadership, a company specialising in the leadership training and coaching of lawyers. Get set to jumpstart your week with a shot of mojo as Midja and her guests talk all things life, love and leadership.
Hey, it's Monday and I'm Midja, and welcome to the podcast all about life, love and leadership. And actually, this episode today is our final episode for season 1 of the podcast. So we have done 30 episodes this season, and I want to say, firstly, of course, a huge thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in every Monday and supporting the podcast and sharing it and just for giving me such wonderful feedback. And of course, I also want to say a huge thank you to all of the guests that we have had on this season. I have learnt so much and I hope you have as well. And it's given you some things to think about. And I thought for this final episode, a bit of a summary for me around what I've learnt from our guests this season, all around those topics of life and love and leadership. So let's start with life lessons. And for me, one of the guests that left such a lasting impression, it was episode 17 with Ben Cox, who is the CEO of the Gold Coast Hospital Foundation. If you haven't listened to that episode, jump back in, take a listen to it. And Ben shared his personal story about, losing both of his parents very young. And then as he was approaching those teenage years, having that knock at the door. And it was a volunteer from Legacy. And Ben's dad was a veteran. And so there was this link with the Legacy Foundation, and there was this knock at the door, and this volunteer who taught Ben how to shave. And that life lesson I get, of what he observed in that experience and how it shaped his career and his purpose and what he does. And I love hearing these kind of the backstory, I guess, of why people do what they do. And when I'm working with clients and they're so passionate about what they do, there's always a backstory. There absolutely always is. And there's that story of origin. Something happened to you, some experience, and that shaped you and the work that you want to do and the difference that you want to make in your life. So I loved that from Ben. He also shared a lot about mental strength and about perseverance. So there were some key messages from that episode and a real sense of consciousness and mindfulness and how Ben practices that. So I took a lot away from that episode. And, particularly coming out of COVID, that focus on mission, that focus on being of service to others. And my good friend, Dr. Dinesh Palapana, he talks a lot around mission and service as well. And certainly that's what I'm focusing on right now. I'm taking that into the next stage of my business and what I want to do next. So I love that from Ben. And I was also looking back, episode 19, Anushka Dowling. Anushka, amazing woman. And in that episode, Anushka spoke to us around discrimination, around inclusiveness, around conditioning, around our scripting. Anushka being, a woman of color, raised in a white family. She spoke about that experience both, in her home and also during her school life, and her own re-scripting that she had to do and her awareness around that and how she did that. And to me, that was really powerful. It was a great episode, again, around that finding purpose. And there was a piece where Anushka spoke about stripping back who she was and to unlearn the labels that she had given herself. It was wow. And looking back on that transcript when I was reading that last night, took a lot away from that episode about finding out who you really are, stripping it back, that reconnection piece. So lots of those life lessons, those aha moments for me. Let's move on now to a lot of what we talk about on this podcast is around leadership and the lessons around leadership. And of course, the main thing that I took away, and hopefully you took away as well, is that leaders come in all different shapes and sizes, and leadership can look very different. And that's the wonderful thing about it. So Carolee Fontanelli, I think it was episode number 2, very early on in the season, Carolee spoke about connection with culture and the cultural leadership of an organization, and in her case of her law firm. And she said this: what I look for in someone is who is going to be a really great fit for the firm. Someone who is keen, someone who is passionate, and someone who is culturally aligned. And I love that, because I'm a big believer in that cultural fit is the most important thing, that we can learn skills and we can learn capabilities and we can train people and people can grow, but that cultural alignment with principles, with values is so important. And sometimes it's hard to see, because on the CV, often when we get people who want to join our organizations, it's just a whole lot of capabilities, whole lot of results, all that stuff that is above the ground. But often it's the stuff that's below the ground. It's the character piece. It's people's values and principles and what they stand for and the type of person they are, that cultural fit that's often below the ground. I think there are ways that we can recruit based on culture and values. There are things we can do. There are questions and there's conversations we can have early on that will bring that stuff above the ground. But it's tough to do, and I think it's a skill that leaders also need to learn about how we can recruit and select based on culture, principles, values, and get that alignment piece right. So that was a lovely reminder for me very early on in my conversation with Carolee. And I also want to talk around this leadership piece. Travis Schultz. So Travis is, he was episode number 4, so very early guest as well. And who can forget, Travis's dress sense? I asked him about that. I think it was the first question I asked him. His response to that around being himself, around, not caring what others think, that authenticity piece, loved all of that. But also the piece around leadership that stood out for me when I interviewed Travis was when he spoke about compassion. Compassion in leadership, and to show that we care as leaders. And I always love that quote. It was told to me very early on in my career. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I keep that with me. I talk to it a lot in my workshops. I talk to leaders about it, both internally looking, when we're leading a team, but also externally. Your clients also don't care how much you know until they know how much you care about them. And Travis spoke about, compassionate conversations that start with empathic listening. So great. Love that. And to get a deeper insight into our team members, the people that are part of our team, and that we have an obligation to understand what's going on for our people and to understand their world. Loved that, Travis. So that message of compassion and leadership, and how some leaders will shy away from that because it could be, it can be soft. It's like, oh, I don't want to cross a line. And I get that. That's certainly a level of professionalism, particularly in professional services with our leadership, but also that we do need to show we care and we need to show compassion And how do we do that? And how do we get that balance right? I think is another great skill for leaders to work on. Tanya Abbey, episode 28. So a recent episode, only released a couple of weeks ago. Tanya spoke a lot around finding your tribe. And I know that leadership can be lonely. I talk to lots of leaders, particularly as they're stepping up in their career, and they're lonely. They're not kind of part of the gang anymore, or they walk into the tea room or into meetings or stuff like that, and the conversation stops. It's like, I'm done. Look, it's the leader. Shh. Let's stop talking about whatever we were talking about. And I get that. And it can seem like it's a lonely gig. And so finding that tribe, finding the other leaders within your organization or within your industry is so important. And those relationships are so important. I talk about that a lot. That support, that tribe, that posse, squad, whatever you want to call it. That's a key message. And I want to finish off this leadership piece and that professional piece. Lauren Dare, episode 6. Lauren, I think we call that episode Bringing Sexy Back to the Law, which I love. And this message of this sexiness kind of message is an important one. It's one I hear a lot, is that people want leaders that they want to be around, leaders that inspire them, people that want to engage in a purpose and a mission and something bigger than themselves, and work that turns them on, and all of that kind of stuff. That's the sexiness piece for me. And for a lot of organizations now, particularly this next generation, how do we attract people into our firm or into our business that are excited, that are passionate about what they do? There is that sexiness piece around it. I think that's really important. So again, I loved that message from Lauren way back in episode number 6. Let's get on to love, which is the final topic that we talk about on this podcast. And oh boy, when I started this podcast and this season, I started off saying that I was looking for big love, that I felt this was my time to find big love, that I'd been single for, I don't know, 7, 8 years now, and that the love piece has been a little bit elusive for me, and sort of an area of my life where maybe I needed some help with, maybe even unsure about what I was actually looking for and what I wanted. And it's been quite, even, we've got 30 episodes, it's been 30 weeks. Oh boy, 30 weeks in my love life. There's a lot that goes on. It's been a lot of excitement and anticipation and maybe not, and then just a lot of no, I don't think so. A little bit of heartbreak, a little bit of what's going on here. So it's a roller coaster, and it has been a roller coaster, but you know what? I remain optimistic, because that's just me. You know me. If you know me well, you know that I do always have kind of the rose-colored glasses on. I am always optimistic. I just can't help it. So I'm out there, and I was looking back on the transcripts about the love advice that some of the guests gave me during this season, and I thought I'd highlight a few things for you, a few messages that people gave me. So Beck Davis, Beck said, what did Beck say? Be yourself and find someone who matches your energy. Good luck, Beck, with that. I'm not sure about the matching my energy. And I have great debate with my friends about this, because some of my friends are like, you need someone who matches you, and woo, and left field and out there. And then I have other friends and other advice from people that go, No, you need exactly the opposite. If we have someone that is exactly like a firecracker like you, that's just going to be too much. You need someone that will settle you and will. So I don't know, matching the energy piece, I'm still uncertain about that. Anyway, more to come. Let's talk more about that energy piece next season. Oh, Jodie Robinson told me, just be all in. Be all in. And I think that may be a part of why I have not maybe found love, is that I'm not sure I've ever been all in. And so that might be a problem. I'm always kind of like, I suppose a bit unsure about exactly what I'm looking for. Larissa Rose said that I should put together like a list of 101 things of the type of man that I want. I did start that list, Larissa. I have not finished it yet. It is in my study, and I am going to finish it. And maybe when I finish that list, it's going to kind of help me to identify exactly what I want. And then, Jodie, I can be all in. Ben Cox, again, Ben gave such wonderful advice. I love this. It was so sweet. Find love that is worthy of you, Midge. I love that. Thank you, Ben. I will try and do that. Jodie Robinson said, don't be afraid of looking silly. And I love that. So get out of your comfort zone. Don't be afraid of looking silly. So I think and take a risk, I think. And there's been a couple of instances just in the last week where I had just I was going to say run-ins, not run-ins, but literally where I've had conversations with men and I'm like, oh my goodness, you seem really cool and really sweet and fun. And then there's this interaction and then kind of we go and I'm like, man, I wonder who that was and what his name was and what his story is. So I'm going to try and be braver in that space. Whereas if I meet someone or I'm vibing with someone, I'm just going to like ask, hey, what's your name? And let's connect and kind of see where it goes from there. So I think I love that. Don't be afraid to look silly. Get out of the comfort zone. And finally, I'm just trying to read my notes here. Cassandra Nielsen, my final kind of guest for this season, said, cull quickly because you haven't got a lot of time. And I love that. And I'm doing more of that because I think I have sometimes been slow to cull. And that's a fine line. That's a balance, right? Like how much time do you give someone? Oh, maybe this will work out. Maybe it don't. And maybe it won't work out. How much time do you give someone? How much do you just cull and go, you know what? I'm not vibing this. Let it go. Next and move on. So like anything, I think with love, with life, with leadership, always so much to learn. I don't know about you, but I mean, I'm nearly 50 and I still feel like I'm still learning every single day. I still have a lot to learn in all of those different aspects. And that's a frustrating part, but also the great part, right? The great part is that when do you get this stuff right? Well, never. And that together we can learn, we can have a whole heap of fun along the way as well, and get better. And that for me is what it's about. Get better, better relationships, doing better work, being of service to others, and really having a great time along the way. So many lessons from 30 episodes, season 1. It has been an absolute delight to be in this studio, to be in your ears every Monday, and we will be back shortly. We're going to take a bit of a break. I'm going to really think about what we want to bring next season, get some great guests lined up for you to listen to in season number 2. So it is Monday. I want you to go out there. I want you to have a fantastic week ahead. I'm Midja, and thank you so much for listening. Thank God it's Monday. See you in season 2. Bye, everyone.
We trust you enjoyed this episode of the Mondays with Midja podcast. Host Midja Fisher is a leadership expert, keynote speaker, coach, and facilitator. To find out more about Midja, visit midja.com.au or follow her on Instagram at Midja Fisher. And make sure you subscribe, share, and leave a review.